Clippers Media Day has completed, and Kawhi Leonard is back and gave some of the most thorough answers I've ever seen him give at any press conference on Monday. And Norman Powell made some bold statements about where he feels his place in the roster and rotation is. Going to talk about it all on today's Locked On Clippers. Let's get it.
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir. You are locking in with the Clips. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers the first listen of your day, your team every day. I am your host, Darian Vaziri, going into my 18th season as a diehard fan of my Clippers. Again, you can find me on social media and on YouTube at Dime Dropper Pod on Twitter and Instagram. I have my own YouTube channel where I talk LA sports, mainly LA basketball, Clipper basketball, post games, and vlogs when I attend games. And of course, NBA history content as well for those who are looking to learn more about the history of our game. You can find that all on my YouTube channel, Dime Dropper. But for today, I am going to be talking about Clipper Media Day. Yes, we've been waiting for this. We have been waiting for the players to speak and to hear from Kawhi Leonard, and you will be hearing me summarize what Kawhi Leonard said. And of course, you can check out the Media Day yourself. It's all over the internet on YouTube. But I'm going to be talking about Kawhi Leonard and how enthusiastic for Kawhi Leonard standards he really was answering these questions and what I took away from it. And then Norman Powell made some big statements about where he feels he fits in the team, talking about he wants to be the starting shooting guard and he wants to be an all-star. Will that get in the way of the team prioritizing individual goals like that? Going to be talking about that. And of course, everyone else and what they said. Paul George, Ty Lue, Robert Covington, John Wall, the whole 9 yards. But we're going to start with the guy that I know you've been waiting to hear from. I don't even remember the last time we heard from him speak in front of people. The last time I saw him doing something outside of sitting on the Clipper bench and pictures of him working out was seeing him in a music video on Way Too Sexy with Future when he released his collaborative album with Culture Jam, or an album that Kawhi helped produce. Great album, by the way, for anyone that's into that kind of music. But that was really funny, that Kawhi Leonard. So something we knew about Kawhi Leonard, he's in a rap and trap. So it's just fun learning more about this guy's personality because this is his fourth year now with the Clippers, and I'm still getting to know this guy's personality. And when I say that, obviously, I don't know him personally. I don't know any of the guys personally, but you tend to think watching him on your screen every other night for a couple of years, hearing him talk and, interacting with them on social media, you get to know them, but Kawhi Leonard doesn't have social media. And the funny part is when you saw him taking over an Instagram Live for Culture Jam, he didn't even know how to flip the camera. So for anyone that thinks he runs that Instagram account or that Twitter account, Culture Jam, I don't think he actually does. But it was so great to hear from Kawhi. And when I say he was more thorough and enthusiastic than I'd ever heard him, I'm not joking, guys. That was the biggest thing that stood out to me. He went a minute plus on almost every single question he got. So to hear him go that in depth and kind of speak with this, again, it's all relative to Kawhi, but excitement and kind of enthusiasm in his voice about this upcoming season was really great to hear. He said multiple times that he's very excited to be back, obviously, and how impressed and excited he is about the roster and the depth. And one thing you're going to hear a lot from me in today's episode, one of the common themes that was emphasized by every player from Ty Lue to Zoo to Kawhi to Paul, the depth. And it's something I've talked about many times on this podcast already. The Clippers are the deepest team in the league. I made that episode and I stand by that statement. They have 12, 13 players that could get into rotations all across the league. And that's going to be tough for Ty Lue to deal with for sure. But Kawhi talked about, his projects, the Culture Jam album I referenced, and he was able to do other things outside of basketball when he was rehabbing. And he also said that the Clippers, Lawrence Frank and them did a great job with the roster, bringing in guys like Robert Covington, who he said is going to space the floor and guard multiple positions. And that's another theme that came out of all the interviews was the versatility that the Clippers have on the defensive end, the ability to not only switch on to multiple positions. Yeah, actually, that's what it was. Switch on to multiple positions. Be versatile. Have guys that we can put lineups in, Clippers can put lineups in, that can switch everything, which takes away those advantages in pick and rolls for teams. Because again, with the modern spacing, if you don't have switch everything personnel, you're giving up something if the offense executes correctly and is spaced out correctly, unless your rotations are just incredible. And there's going to be lineups like Terrence Mann, Rocco, Kawhi, Paul George, and Nico Batum all in at once, or Norman Powell in for one of those guys I just named, and they're going to be able to switch basically everything. I mean, with the lineup I just named, Nico Batum, Terrence Mann, Kawhi, Paul George, Rocco, that's 5 guys that are 6'6" or over and have wingspans that are 6'10" plus, every single one of them damn near. I think, yeah, every single one of them. So, just so many options for Ty Lue. Kawhi, I think that he expects, and he probably should expect, that a defensive burden will not be placed on him with all these defensive guys the Clippers have. But again, Kawhi and Paul George are wings, and a lot of the best players on other teams are wings, and they're going to need to play some defense as well in terms of guarding the best players. I don't think it's going to be that frequent, but I think with the ability to switch so many players onto these kind of elite guys, they're going to get rests on the court through that, because they're not going to have to fight over every screen or stay attached and fight around and navigate over every single screen. They're going to be able to just say, oh, switch, easy. And that's the luxury that the Clippers have, and Kawhi knows that the Clippers have. And also, Kawhi Leonard hasn't played with Norman Powell with the Clippers yet. These are 2 guys that won a championship in Toronto together, and he talked about that. He talked about how much better Norman Powell has gotten scoring the basketball, shooting the basketball, and he said he's a good on-ball defender, which Norman Powell, we only saw 5 games of him for the Clippers. And I think defense is the biggest thing that you don't really know unless you really watch a guy very frequently. And that, a lot of times, that's much easier when a guy's on your team and you get to watch them night in, night out. Because even when I watch, let's say, a nationally televised game between the Celtics and the Bucks, I'm not necessarily locking in on Pat Connaughton's defense. Do you know what I'm saying? But by now, I've watched the Milwaukee Bucks enough in these deep playoff runs to know which players are good at defense or not. But a guy like Norman Powell, who, yeah, the Toronto Raptors had deep playoff runs, but it was a couple years ago, and Norman Powell increased his minutes each run, so I couldn't really see. I've always thought he was a solid defender, but there were times last season where he got blown by a little easily. However, I still think he's solid, and he's also very strong for his size. You know, he's not a little 6'4", he's a big 6'4". So, and he also got a 6'11" wingspan. I just looked that up. So it's going to be interesting to see how Norman Powell defends. Kawhi obviously spoke pretty well of him. And, you know, one of the beat writers or columnists, Miriam Swanson, asked Kawhi if he's bigger, if he's stronger. And he said that he feels bigger and stronger because he had to rehab and certain muscles and things got stronger as he worked his way back into shape and back into full strength. So that sounds good. And obviously everyone's been talking about the quads and the thighs and the Kawhi Leonard memes and all that. And so, yeah, I mean, his lower body looks crazy right now. He looks like an absolute tank. I just hope that doesn't take away from his quickness and agility. But that post game is going to be vicious. He's going to be creating a lot of space, backing dudes down in the post because his lower body is just, and that's one thing I've actually been if you listen to my actual podcast or my personal podcast, Dime Dropper, I'm very critical of post game in today's game. And a lot of it's because I think a lot of guys don't work on their base or lower body strength as much. Kobe emphasized that a lot when he was doing detail on ESPN. You saw guys like Kristaps Porzingis play against the Clippers in the playoffs, and he couldn't even back down Reggie Jackson. He couldn't even back down Nico Batum. Kawhi Leonard, though, I mean, that guy, I said it already many times on this podcast, best mid-post player in the league, and one of, if not the best, post player in the league, but Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid would definitely have an argument there. Also, on his health, which obviously I know you're wondering, he said he feels good. He's ready for training camp, which just started today. It'll be yesterday when you hear this, if you're listening to it on Wednesday. And he says he's ready to go, and he's just going to take it day by day in terms of which games he plays, which he doesn't, how his body is feeling, how his body is responding. Going to have to listen to doctors. But he said that one thing he's looking forward to is not having to listen to doctors and physicians so much. He's going to be able to talk more basketball and have more basketball conversations because he's going to be on the basketball court. So, again, I am just so ecstatic to have Kawhi Leonard back because it's been now the 4th season of this Kawhi era in Clipperland. And it's really the 3rd season because we didn't have him last year. And obviously, the bubble season was just so weird. And then we didn't have fans. Even though 2021, you got to experience watching Kawhi Leonard on TV, we did not have fans to the playoffs. So again, it's still very surreal to have him on the team, to have Kawhi Leonard, a guy who's lifted 2 Finals MVP trophies in front of my eyes, playing for the Clippers. Do you know how many times the Clippers have had Finals MVPs on their roster? 0. Actually, no, that's wrong. Chauncey Billups. Shout out to Chauncey Billups, 2004. Yeah, by the way, if I'm forgetting one, just brain farting right now, I know I hold myself to a high standard with this history stuff, but if I'm forgetting a Finals MVP, please name it. Oh my God, Paul Pierce. But guys, you know what I'm saying? Like, Paul Pierce was past his prime. Chauncey Billups was way past his prime. We got Kawhi Leonard coming off the Finals MVP, so there's different levels to this thing, and I'm so excited to see him back on the court. He says he feels good, and also, he said he would have played if the Clippers made the finals. He was laughing though when he said that, so I think it's just kind of like he would have just done anything to play, but I don't think that sounds like it would have been a great decision. He only just got cleared to play 5-on-5, but who knows if that means that he wasn't ready to. Who knows if that means that he wasn't ready? We just heard the announcement that he was cleared to play 5-on-5. It doesn't mean that he wasn't ready to play in NBA games 2 months ago. However, I doubt it personally. But, hey, it is what it is. Am I mad at Kawhi for saying that? Absolutely not. I don't think even if he had in this hypothetical, because he even said it's woulda, coulda, shoulda. But if he had come back in this hypothetical scenario and rushed himself back in the finals to play that level of intensity games after missing an entire season, it would have been would have been a really strong chance of another injury sustained right then and there, kind of similar to Kevin Durant coming back too early against Toronto in the finals. So it's better that he just didn't, and it's better that we just, I guess, didn't make the playoffs, because now they're fully charged and ready to go. So Kawhi Leonard, ladies and gentlemen, but coming up, we are going to talk about Norman Powell, basically like another new signing. He only played 5 games for the Clippers last season, so it's really going to feel like he's brand new. But he also had big expectations and big goals that he set for himself that he referred to on Media Day. And I'm just wondering, are they going to affect or get in the way of the team goal? We're going to talk about that coming up. The Golden State Warriors are plus 575. They have the highest odds to win the NBA championship this upcoming season. But the LA Clippers are not that far behind. With plus 750, they have the 5th best odds, or tied for the 4th best odds to win the championship. And if I were you, I would go to betonline.net and place a bet on those Clippers to win the championship. Betonline.net is your number 1 source for your basketball betting info this season, as well as football as well. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. The World Cup is coming up in Qatar very, very soon. There's going to be a lot of people betting on that, and I would do so as well. As always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your betting info and needs, your sports wagering information. And remember, you can also bet on MMA, MLB, the playoffs are coming up, go Dodgers, boxing, and golf. Just remember to head over to betonline.net and use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Okay, Norman Powell, who was alongside Robert Covington, the biggest acquisition for the Clippers, obviously, in midseason, coming over for Eric Bledsoe and Justice Winslow from Portland. And sadly, we were robbed of Norman Powell very quickly, who injured his foot after a couple of games. He came back around the end of the season and played in the play-in games, but he just didn't get a chance to really integrate himself fully into the team. I mean, how could you with 5 games? But he was still incredible in those games. 21.4 points per game on 51% shooting and an astonishing 54% from 3, which is absolutely incredible. Don't expect those numbers to hold, though, Clipper Nation. But his overall 2022 numbers were 19 points a game, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists on 45.5% from the field and 40% from 3. So if he can shoot 40% from 3, what a luxury that would be for the Clippers. And not only does he have the ability to hit the 3, he can, when guys try to run him off the line, he can get all the way to the basket, and he's really good finishing to his strong right hand, and he's a decent playmaker. And I'm a big fan of Norman Powell. He went to UCLA. In my opinion, he was the best player on the 2015 UCLA Bruins team that made it to the Sweet 16. And he's been a really good pro since he stepped into the league. He played in high intensity playoff games in Toronto very early in his career. The first season he played, they went to the conference finals for the first time in franchise history, and he was a very solid part of that. He had a really good series, if I can recall correctly, against the Indiana Pacers for a rookie. And maybe not really good, but I remember him actually contributing in that playoffs, which a lot of rookies don't do. But Norman Powell had some interesting quotes in the media day. And the first thing I'll say, though, let me start with some non-controversial. John Wall's competitive drive, he said, would be the biggest part or the biggest addition of having John Wall is his competitive spirit and his playmaking, his court vision. He even referred to times in the past where he was on the other team and John Wall would fake him out with his eyes. He thought he thought he would be going all the way for the layup, and he'd kick it out to the corner and make plays. So, and another big theme that everyone talked about, Ty Lue, Paul George, Norman Powell, that John Wall is going to push the pace, and he's going to give the Clippers an element that they have not had in previous seasons. Clippers have been middle of the pack to bottom in pace the last couple of seasons. So it would be nice for John Wall to kickstart some transition basketball, especially with guys like Terrence Mann who really like to get up and down the floor. And obviously if we can get Paul George in transition, given his size and skill, that's going to be really beneficial for the Clippers. And to get some easy baskets, not always have to play half-court basketball, even though the Clippers have one of the better offenses and half-court offenses in the league. But by the way, so for anyone that's probably questioning about Norman Powell's playoff run in that rookie season, I know I wasn't tripping. Game 7, he had 13 points off the bench as a rookie. Game 7 against Indiana, and mind you, at that time, the Toronto Raptors hadn't won a first-round series in that DeRozan and Lowry era, so that's why it stuck out to me so much, because he had double digits off the bench as a rookie when the Raptors had this thing where they could not get past the first round in the beginning. So here are the controversial quotes, though, at least controversial in my eyes in ways that sparked conversation. Norman Powell said that he wants to be the starting shooting guard for the Clippers. Now, of course, that's good to hear. You know, he has his personal goals and aspirations. Of course, he wants to start. I've previously referred to him as a guy that I would like to see come off the bench to give that extra scoring firepower and not really take the ball away from Kawhi and Paul George. But that being said, Norman Powell is very solid and comfortable off the ball, which I really like. So, honestly, probably better off the ball and more comfortable off the ball than Reggie and John Wall. So, and obviously he's played with Kawhi. The thing is, when he makes a statement like that, that sounds like he wants the ball, he wants to play in pick and roll, he wants more plays drawn up for him or called for him. And I just don't want individual goals like that, like starting shooting guard, or he also said he wants to be an all-star, which, I mean, a lot of people right now, including myself, consider the Clippers a team with 2 stars and a bunch of really good guys that could step up and be a third option on a given night. But Norman Powell wants to make this a big 3. I mean, all the power to him. But I just don't want anyone to try to act like a third star when it's not there. I mean, maybe, you know what? Maybe Norman Powell plays amazing. Maybe Norman Powell averages 20 points and we do have a third star and he does have a breakout season. But at the same time, an all-star in the Western Conference, especially in the backcourt positions, is very, very tough right now. You got Damian Lillard coming back from injury. You obviously have Steph Curry and Luka Doncic. And then you have Ja Morant. I mean, the West is not easy at all to make that all-star team. So I think that's a little far-fetched, but at the same time, as a player, you want to have that kind of confidence and you want to have these goals for yourself. But obviously, as a fan or as a podcast host, being objective, more so as a fan, to be honest, I just want the team to do what it takes to win a championship. I don't care about the individual accolades or achievements this season. I just want the team to win the championship. So I'd hope, though, that if Norman Powell, or Ty Lue, I should say, decides that Norman Powell needs to come off the bench, he doesn't make a ruckus or cause a fuss about it, because it doesn't mean he's not good enough to start. The most important thing is not actually starting, it's actually closing the games. Starting is kind of trivial, in my opinion. Closing the games is what's important. And I think it's really so you're probably wondering, why shouldn't Norman Powell start? You think he's our third best player, right? Absolutely. But I'm a big fan of going with this wing emphasis. Nico Batum, Kawhi Leonard, and Paul George. Paul George as your shooting guard. Because all three of those guys can switch. Any screen that's set, Kawhi's man setting a screen for Nico's man, switch. Kawhi's man setting a screen for Paul's man, switch. So just having that versatility with three guys that can switch 1 to 5 in that starting lineup would be awesome. So that really makes it very clear that, in my opinion, the way Norman Powell can break into the starting lineup and really, really perform at the level that he wants is to show that he can guard, and they can guard multiple positions at a high level. Can he guard bigs? Probably not. I think the only guys on our team that can really guard bigs that aren't bigs are Kawhi, Paul, Batum, and Rocco, and a little bit of Terrence as well. But Norman Powell may just be a little too small at 6'4". And I don't even just mean bigs. I mean like bigger wings, like, Giannis is, and I wouldn't consider Zion a wing. But Zion was a problem for the Clippers when he played in 2021. The Pelicans in general were a problem. But even guys like Brandon Ingram, like you could just turn over with a guy that can play back to basket like that. You could just turn over Norman Powell like he's a chair. So it's gonna be interesting to see how Norman Powell defends and how he tackles that challenge. But in my opinion, I just really don't want it to be a big deal. If Norman Powell does not start, I want him to be okay with coming off the bench. I really wanted him to run the second unit with John Wall. And I don't think it's a big deal if he takes the ball out of John Wall's hands here and there. Because Terrence Mann, yes, he's shown some chops playmaking and pick and roll. But he's more comfortable off the ball, and I don't think he's going to be asking for that. Same goes for Luke Kennard, who, again, we saw him playmaking pick and roll here and there last season. But on this team, especially with Norman Powell and John Wall, he will not be asked to do that much at all. And the Clippers aren't going to need that much from him in that sense. He just needs to spot up and shoot threes and move around and come off screens for threes. And I just hope he plays enough to even get those opportunities. But coming up, we're going to go through the final takeaways, the major themes we took from Media Day, and some things that other guys said. Paul George, Ivica Zubac, Ty Lue. Stay tuned. Going to close it out coming up with the rest of the Clippers. All right. So to close it out, let's hear from Paul George. I'm sorry. I shouldn't get you guys too excited like you're going to hear Paul George's actual voice, but Paul George said a couple of things. Nothing that you haven't really heard from him. That's why I didn't really emphasize him and his quotes too much. But obviously he talked about John Wall. Going to be great. Going to push the pace, like I said. Excited to have Kawhi back. Excited to have one of the best players in the league back. He said all that good stuff. But the main thing I really liked that he said was he had a promise and a vision to bring a championship to the Clippers. And this season, I really love the attitude of the whole team. And the fans obviously can be a little bit more boastful and trash talking in ways and come off a little arrogant because the fans are just so excited. Clipper fans are just so excited. But overall, fan base included and the players and coaches, it just seems that there's this confidence that the Clippers know and everybody knows how capable this team is and what the opportunity in front of them is, how great of a chance they have to win the championship. And if we're being real, it's championship or bust, and there's no excuses to be made. This team has no excuse not to get this done. They have depth out the wazoo. They have 2 star players, one that's taken them to the promised land, which, again, going back to previous episodes, is the biggest question. How good is Kawhi Leonard going to be? If he's anything close to that old Kawhi Leonard, which I think he will be, then Clipper fans and the Clippers are going to be solid, to say the least. Should be considered favorites right there with the Warriors and the Bucks. And then obviously the coaches, and the coach, head coach, Ty Lue, proven himself as a champion and only improved his stock and made more people believe in him the last couple of years. I mean, I believe in him. I trust him with my life at this point. The guy is a basketball guru. Does he come without mistakes? No. No coach does, and I think people need to realize that. Coaches are humans. They make mistakes. And again, one thing I love that Ty said in his presser or in the media day was he reflected a lot this summer to not be so hard on himself. But one thing I love about him is that he is hard on himself. And I know this is a stupid anecdote in comparison, but, I coached youth sports for a while, and I still do. And as a coach, as opposed to a player, you really feel it harder because as a player, you got to do whatever you can, and sometimes you try your best, and it's a team game. Sometimes your players don't have a good game, and you just try your best, and sometimes it doesn't go your way. As a coach, though, you feel responsible for every player, all the schemes, the decisions, the lineup changes. You always think about what you could have done differently, and it's very tough. It's very tough because you also don't have that same control as when you're on the court. And one thing I love about Ty Lue is how accountable he is for himself. He takes blame when he doesn't even have to. Whereas our last coach, I had a huge problem with him never taking blame. So it's just polar opposite 180, and I just love Ty Lue. And another big theme, by the way, mental health. John Wall emphasized it, obviously, as I talked about in this Players Tribune article. Robert Covington emphasized then how he had a tough summer, and he's feeling really good now. He's in good spirits. But you saw him talk about on social media that he wasn't okay at times this summer. And then Norman Powell said he was taking some time away from the game this summer and really trying to finally rest and take time to hang out with family and friends. And he has a mental health coach. So shout out to the players for speaking out on that. We always forget that they are humans with regular problems like all of us regular people. They just have a fatter bank account and are famous. And yeah, again, the team has this optimism and realize the opportunity, but it's a focused energy. It's not like 2019-20 where everyone's going out saying, oh, we're going to be so dangerous, we're going to be amazing, we're going to kill teams. Like Montrezl saying it's a wrap. Paul George, who's going to score on us? Pat Beverly and Lou Williams, talk to us. It's just Kawhi, this is doing those New Balance commercials. He's the king of this city. Like, it was just too much. It was just the arrogance. They just thought they could waltz out onto the court, and they would out-talent teams. And now the team has been humbled so much that I think they understand, one, anything can happen, and two, anything can happen in terms of injuries too. You got to appreciate how healthy they are right now and the opportunity that presents itself, and don't take it for granted and don't get overconfident. And I think that's the vibe that's spread throughout the Clipper team right now, and it's amazing because you don't want them getting overconfident. And as a fan, I think as Clipper fans at this point, regardless of how good our team is, there's no chance we can be overconfident anymore. And speaking of Clipper fans, Reggie Jackson said, we have great fans, rowdy. I love, that guy's just a beacon of sunshine, isn't he? Reggie Jackson, I mean, he's dancing, he's smiling. There's been a lot of players that have come to the Clippers in the Ballmer era that seem so ecstatic to be here, but he may top the list. I mean, he is just like, ever since he re-signed, it's like I think that was, going into last season, it looks like he's just enjoying being alive. Like, and he said that in the presser, that he's breathing and stuff, but it's like every time he's putting on that Clipper uniform, he's living his best life. So, again, Clipper fans, keep showing Reggie Jackson love. That's the great part about Clipper Nation is I feel like we have actually changed Reggie Jackson's confidence and revived his career. I mean, at the end of that Detroit tenure, it was looking kind of bleak for him. And even when he came to the Clippers in the beginning, it was looking kind of bleak for him in the bubble. But Ty Lue has done such a great job with him, and I think Clipper fans have too. I think we really uplifted the guy, and he's just in great spirits. So, and then the last couple players, Zoo and Mook. Not much from Zoo. He said that he did tweak his ankle, as I talked about a couple episodes ago, but he's okay and he's ready for training camp. And he played this summer. I just hope that his Eurobasket exploits did not take a toll on his body, because Zubats, as I said in the last couple episodes, he might be the most indispensable role player on this team. We just don't have a true replacement for him. And then Marcus Morris had some interesting quotes as well. He said that this was his longest offseason in terms of rest. He lost 10 pounds, he said. And he said that the last two off seasons he was struggling with healing from a knee injury. And we saw him miss, after the first two games of last season, like 15 games in a row. He missed like a whole month from late October to late November. So if you remember that, he was not 100%, especially dating back to that Phoenix Suns series where he got injured. So Marcus Morris has had a knee ailment the last 2 years going into the season, and he says he feels great. And he even said, I want to dunk. I didn't dunk last season, I don't think. And the funny part is, I was thinking about it, and I'm like, I don't remember Marcus Morris Sr. dunking. So the fact that he wants to dunk again, he says he can dunk, and that's one of his goals, is awesome to hear, because I always describe Mook as a two-level scorer. He's great in the mid-range. He's great from three, but he just doesn't get to the rim. He doesn't elevate at all anymore. That's just not part of his game. And it's funny, I looked up the stats. He shot 5%, and I had to round up for this, 5% of his shot attempts last year came from with 3 feet or closer. So everything else, I mean, was beyond that. Only 5%. And mind you, he shot 69% from 0 to 3 feet. But only 5% is not a huge sample size. So hopefully you can see Mook get to the basket a little bit more this season based on how he's talking about himself and his health. But also he said he wants to be the best, or he's gonna be the best three-point shooter in the league this season. And I know that's not crazy because he's shot such great percentages for the Clippers in the past, especially in that 2021 season. I mean, he was just automatic that regular season, wasn't he? Looking up the numbers right now, 47% from deep that year. I mean, come on. Last season, 37%. And, one of our beat writers, Farbod, made a funny joke, was like, Luke Kennard, it wasn't even a joke, just said Luke Kennard led the league in three-point percentage last year with 45%. Is there a competition, friendly competition? And Marcus said, nah, Luke's a great shooter, but I'm just going to try to be one of the best three-point shooters in the league. And again, I've talked about Marcus Morris Sr., should he get traded, so much these podcasts, and I'm just going to tell you right now, that's the end of that, okay? The offseason is done. Training camp is here. Marcus Morris Sr. is on the roster, and I love Marcus Morris Sr. still, and I'm going to back him. Even if I feel like his presence on the team is redundant, I'm going to back him and hope he is standing on a championship parade bus on Figueroa come June. And again, the common themes, again, depth. Everybody talked about it. We've talked about it so much. Versatility, the ability to switch multiple guys onto multiple positions. Everyone's happy to have Kawhi back, and John Wall is going to push the pace, and Ty Lue hit all those points very well. And again, just so much to be excited about, Clipper Nation. So much. If you want to find me throughout this whole journey, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod. And of course, subscribe to my YouTube channel for the closest raw reactions from a diehard Clipper fan. That's Dime Dropper on YouTube. And by the way, remember to subscribe to Locked On Clippers on YouTube. Let us get to 1,000 subscribers. We are only one of 2 Locked On NBA channels that are not monetized yet. So let's get to 1K. Tell your friends about it. Tell your Clipper fan friends about it. Let's get this thing to 1K. It's the fastest way to grow the channel. And the way to grow the channel is also by commenting. Today's question, I want you guys to comment. Should Norman Powell be the starting shooting guard? Should he be the starting shooting guard? And do you think if he's not, it can cause potential problems? So it'll be a 2-part question. Do you think he can be the starting shooting guard? And if Ty Lue decides to bring him off the bench, do you think he'll make a fuss about it? I don't think he will, even though he said that he wants to be that guy and he wants to be an all-star. But you let me know. Again, I'm Darian Vaziri. Some of you know me as Dime or Dime Dropper. And again, the age-old proverb, go Clippers. So much to be excited about. And preseason's on the horizon.